Have you ever wanted to use a label to describe your sexuality, but you weren't sure exactly which one to choose? Have you ever wanted a label that kind of covers everything? Something that's a bit general or something that doesn't necessarily pin you into one box? Today, I am going through 10 of the best general, non-specific sexuality labels that you can use today to express generally how you are. Check them out. Hi, wonderful, lovely people. It's Mark here from Not Defining. I hope you're doing well. Not Defining is a place where we delve into different sexualities, genders, labels, and all things so that you can find your best self and where you fit, regardless of how you identify. So we're going to get started with these labels, okay? The first one is multisexual, okay? Multisexual is one of the broadest labels of all. It's really just super varied. It can mean that you could be attracted to anyone, any gender, any type, any time, in any way. You might have a preference, you might not. Multisexual, or some people shorten it to M-spec, which means multisexual spectrum, which is like even more broad, is basically the umbrella term for what most people would describe as bisexual, okay? It just means any gender, any time, and it is perfectly scientifically accurate because it's multisexual, it's as many as you want. So if you want a really general sexuality label, you can say, I am multisexual, I am M-spec. Going on to number 2. So the second one is homosexual. That's right, pomo, P-O-M-O, homosexual. What does this mean? Homosexual actually refers to somebody who believes that sexuality shouldn't actually be defined. So it's quite a good one for us here at Not Defining. We are a place where we try to break down labels and just see the human inside. So if you're interested in that, please hit the subscribe button. We've got loads of content about that. Homosexual is somebody who basically has a label for not wanting a label. So if you're someone who really feels uncomfortable with talking about your sexuality, somebody who feels that, you shouldn't have to explain it to anyone, then homosexual is the word to describe you. So moving on to number 3. This is one of my favorites, Abrosexual. Abrosexual, A-B-R-O, means somebody who experiences different sexualities at different times. So this might be somebody who uses different labels at different times. This might be somebody who genuinely feels that they are kind of identifying with one sexuality or another at different times. Abrosexual is the word for you. You should see the flag popping up. Moving on to number 4. Number 4, maybe you've heard of it, is bi-curious. Bi-curious is actually genuinely one of the most common sexualities that there are. Research shows that most people identify as heterosexual, and the second most common sexuality is what we would call bi-curious, or just kind of slightly out of that heterosexual box, and maybe considering like you might be capable of more, but maybe you haven't acted on it, or maybe you're not entirely sure. This is very common. Bi-curious is a nice word. I think it's quite a positive word. It suggests that you have a natural curiosity, you're open to it. Bi-curious can also be used in the polyamorous world to mean somebody who maybe is looking to experiment or looking to explore that part of themselves, but maybe hasn't done it before. So it can also be helpful in that context. So number 4 is bi-curious. Now, the next sexuality label is very, very similar to bi-curious, but it has a little bit of a different connotation, and that is heteroflexible. Once again, heteroflexible people, or people who are kind of mainly in a hetero identity, but they kind of understand that they might be able to experience more. That is a very, very common sexuality to have. So anybody who says, oh, heteroflexible is like a cop-out, heteroflexible is like not really queer, it's actually very, very common. So if you have gay people, bi people, anyone telling you that that's not a valid label to have, well, actually there are more heteroflexible people in this world than there are gay people. Just as an example. So don't feel like you're any less than if heteroflexible really kind of explains the way that you are oriented, then that is great. The other nice thing about heteroflexible is that there's another word to go along with it, homoflexible. And this describes somebody who is predominantly gay identifying, but they understand that they might have the capacity to experience more. Yeah. Once again, these terms can be used as set identities. They can also be used in the polyamorous community for describing someone who maybe normally is straight, normally is gay, but they might be willing to engage in other kinds of intimacy, provided that it's the right situation. Sometimes people who are hetero or homoflexible will use that term to describe the fact that they are in a same-sex or a different-sex relationship, but that they may be open to some form of threesome or some form of open relationship, provided that it is with their partner. Okay, so you might be straight, male, female, but you might be okay with having a third person, provided you're still with your partner. It doesn't have to mean that, but that's sometimes how it is used. So, hetero, homo, flexible. The 6th one is my favorite, which is not defining. Also, we can say unlabeled, non-labeled, no labeled, undefining, not defining, no definition, whatever you want to say. Not defining is a perfectly valid orientation, and I will tell you why. It is nobody's business what your sexuality is. It is nobody's right to ask you who you're attracted to, what you do in the bedroom, what your sexuality or your orientation is. Okay, we live in a world where people think that we have to have a label. No, we don't. Okay? Not defining is perfectly valid. Maybe you're not sure what your orientation is. Maybe you can't be bothered with your orientation. You don't think it's very important. Yeah, maybe you just don't feel comfortable talking about it because it's kind of private. Yeah, whatever the reason is, you can just say, look, I don't really define my sexuality, or look, I don't really put a label on my sexuality, and that is perfectly valid. Anyone who tells you otherwise can get in the bin. Moving on to number 7, the next one is bi plus or bi spectrum. Yeah, if you are generally on the bi spectrum, you're not really sure where you fit, you can say, hey, I'm kind of on the bi spectrum, or I'm generally bi plus. Yeah, the good thing about using the term bi is that most people will kind of understand what that means. Maybe if they don't understand what multisexual means or abrosexual, something like that, bi plus or bi spectrum will, for most people, explain kind of what you are. But the plus and the spectrum kind of just broadens it out to say, hey, I'm generally in this area, but I don't really define much more specifically than that. So bi plus is the next label. Moving on, the next one is queer. Queer is such a great general label, and the good thing about the term queer is that it kind of encompasses both sexuality and gender identity, if that's what you like. It doesn't have to be, but it's often used by people, for example, who might be gay and non-binary, yeah? Or they might be bi and agender, yeah? Or trans and pan, whatever. Queer is such a broad term. If you think about it this way, if homosexual is the kind of scientific word for gay, heterosexual is like the scientific word for straight, then LGBTQ plus is kind of like the official word for queer. Okay, so queer, it's like the colloquial term for LGBT. Yeah, it's got some connotations which some people don't like, and that's absolutely fine. But queer is a really nice term that just encompasses everything. It could mean anything. It basically just means you're not necessarily cis heterosexual. If you want to find out more about the term queer, I have a whole video on it. Check it out here or here, up there. The next term is sexually fluid, or just fluid. This is a really nice term referring, of course, to somebody whose sexuality might change, that might kind of merge. Maybe they have different days where they feel different things, but fluid, sexually fluid is a really nice term to describe that. And finally, number 10, the last label on our list is questioning. Questioning is the Q in LGBTQ along with queer, and it does what it says on the tin. Questioning is somebody who questions what their attractions are, questions where they fit on the spectrum, and questioning is completely fine. Questioning is a valid state to be, whether for a certain period of time or indeed for your whole life. So questioning is a lovely label to use. It's an open label to use, and it's perfectly valid. So those are my 10 non-specific sexuality labels. Let me know if any of those connects with you, and please write in the comments if you have any more. I've got my pansexual flag there. That's even another one on this list that I haven't even gone into. The list is endless. Let me know your favorite terms and which one you identify with. If you can share this video with someone who would benefit from it, I would be so grateful. Click the subscribe to join us for more, and I will see you very soon. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Love you lots. Bye for now.